Welcome, my homies, to the Please Do Tell podcast, where age is just a number and stories know no bounds. I'm Ronnika, your millennial storyteller, here to bridge the generation gap one captivating narrative at a time. In each episode, we embark on a journey together, exploring shared experiences, heartfelt connections, and the timeless art of storytelling. From the wisdom of baby boomers to the perspectives of Gen Z, there's a tale for everyone in our diverse tapestry of human experiences. So grab your favorite beverage, settle into your comfiest chair, and prepare to be swept away by tales that resonate across generations. Get ready for insights, laughter, and moments that remind us of our shared humanity. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Now, without further ado, let the storytelling begin. Hey, my homies, it's Ronnika for another episode. This is the month of June. And let me just tell you, there's so many things that's going on this month. And we're almost to the end of it. Yesterday was Juneteenth. And, but this particular story, I would say that it combines my love of music, which we're still in the month of June, Black Music Month, and my village, and how one particular person from my village changed my life forever. Y'all ready? This is like a full-on, like, I don't even know if some of the stories that some of the many stories within this story time today, I've even shared before. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy. And there's some things that you may be able to identify with. So I'm going to read it. I wrote most of it down so I wouldn't forget some small details. One of my first friends in the neighborhood lived across the street from me. I had a couple of friends on my street coming up, but one boy reigned supreme amongst all the girls. And I'm reading this so I for sure won't mess up and say names, okay? So, Brian has always been the one that was overprotective of me. And the older we got, I was the same way about him. The summer that I had so much going on in my life before starting middle school, I spent the entire summer with him and his family. His family, who still live in the neighborhood, was huge. His mom being the only girl amongst, I think, 10 or 11 girls, and those uncles having plenty of kids that would come from all over and were the best flippers. I tell you, probably to this day, they could do the best cartwheels, which I could never really achieve, the round offs. I said, how are you flipping down hills? But okay. And the grandparents that lived across the street really was the place to be. That's where everyone met up at. Imagine this girl, with skirts on trying to flip with the boys. Epic fail. It was me, his cousin, and Brian playing outside in our imaginary adult world we called Frumington. Don't know where that came from at all. Frumington. Whenever Brian would say Frumington, we knew that we were going into our pretend land. Catching fireflies, rolling down the hills in his grandparents' backyard. It was just a time. And I'm saying that I've been friends with him since, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was like actually going outside to play at like 3, but I guess it was like right across the street and I was in the front yard so they can see me. Brian was different. The mystical braids, arched eyebrows, and cut off jean shorts. Other kids in the neighborhood that weren't a part of our friend circle would call him names, but he was a fighter, so that never really fazed him. It was my 17th birthday, and by this time he was living in another city. He was the friend that I would say was maybe around my parents the most because he lived across the street. He was around with my family the most. And like everybody just knew Brian in the same way they knew me, especially from when the street lights come on or when there's a party in the backyard of his grandparents' house. Neek Neek was always his plus one. So Neek Neek was my childhood nickname. You may hear, if you hear anyone that's not related to me call me that, they grew up with me because that was the name that they were yelling for me to come in the house. So again, let me get back to he's been there from the very beginning. It was my 17th birthday, and by this time he was living in another city, but would come to my hometown often to still hang out with me and stay with his grandparents. I was the first to drive in the neighborhood and have my own car. He hung out with me and my friends that day, and we went to the park or the river. It was one of them. It was a place where everyone would go to hang out, but on this particular end of the river, this is where everyone would fish. Fishing was something that his grandfather, well, the family, would do often, so being near the water was natural for him. We sat on the bench that day, and he said, "I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." And at that time, I know I had a little rose colored escort, little rose colored escort, and I remember I had it backed in. The rest of my friends were off near the river because I don't know how to fish. I'm gonna be honest with you. I never as long as I've been around Brian, I never went fishing with them. So our other friends were over, just kind of mingling with the people that were fishing. It was just him and I on the bench, and I was letting music play from the speakers of my car. He said, "I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." He looked me right in my eyes and said, "Ronnika, I'm bisexual," which means I'm attracted to men and women. I replied with, "Okay." He said, "Don't tell me you didn't know, or were you just in denial all of these years?" He said, "I've known I was different since about the age of 5." And I had to unpack that for just a second. We began to go down memory lane of when in the neighborhood. For myself, kids would say, "Ronika's mother must be white because she talks like that." And so that was always my battle. For him, it was, "Brian is gay." And they would say um some other derogatory terms or words towards him. And he would just take it. And sometimes he would get to the point where he would fight. And we began to talk about that. And he said, "I remember there was a couple times, or he said, when I would come back to visit, someone actually said to me that someone was talking about you, that she has a gay best friend. And she almost got into a fight with a boy on the bus." And he said, "I don't want you to ever fight about what my lifestyle is. It has nothing to do with you." And he said, "But I know that you've always been a protector of your friends." He said, "But I want you to be able to know that you heard it from me, that this is how I am going to live my life." I said, "Okay." And he said, "This doesn't change the way that I feel about you or I treat you, and I definitely don't want it to change how you treat me." And I still sat with that. And he said, "Come on, Ronnika, you saw me come over your house." I believe we were 11. Yeah, he came over my house. And he said, "I had mystical, like the rapper mystical braids." And I had extensions. Like he said, it wasn't even my hair. I had extensions. And he said, that was one summer. He said, then another summer, he said, I came over and my eyebrows were arched. And he said, your dad looked at me like, it's something different. He said, but he treated me the same. He said, he said, everyone in your family knew I was different, but they never treated me the way that society I know has treated me all these years. I said, you think they know? He said, they definitely said you were the only one that did not know. He said, or maybe you were in denial, maybe you just had this protection up that it's if anyone said anything harmful against me, you were just automatically on the defense. And I got to thinking, I might be like that with all of my friends. I am. There's one thing about Brian and I is that we love music. We would say that we are the real RnB. And I knew that that birthday would never be I knew that birthday was a turning point in both of our lives, because it was an opportunity for him to speak to me open and honestly and not hide anything that he was doing. But the next year, on my 18th birthday, he told me he was gay. So I said, okay, wait, this isn't going to be a thing. So I said, okay, whatever other secrets you got, you don't tell me on my 19th birthday. He said, sweetie, I ain't going to tell you I want to be a woman. I love myself and men too much. And we sat and laughed and cried. He said, I think I was in denial last year. I was afraid for my friend. This world isn't kind to those that choose to live differently from how we think we should be living. And sometimes I go back and forth with, I don't want to hear when people are like, oh, it's a choice. I don't care. I just want especially the people that are in my, I want them to be treated with respect as human beings. And after Brian told me this about, okay, well, maybe the men in my life maybe knew this whole time. And I remember asking my dad, this was years after I knew about Brian. And I said, did you always know that Brian was gay? He said, yeah, I knew. And he said, but there's gay people in our family too. And why should I care? So why should you care? He said, are they asking me for any money? He said, that's the only time I care. He said, when people ask me to pay their bills when they are able bodies, he said, other than that, I don't care what you're doing. You're not harming yourself. It's not doing harm to me or anybody in my family. I really don't feel like it's doing harm to others. He said, it's just none of my business. Brian was one of the last few people that I saw before I made that big move to North Carolina in 2008. Remember, I had just bought my first brand new car. We were sitting outside of an apartment complex because he was here visiting a friend. And he said, I'm just so proud of you, Neek. He said, "You see, I'm saying this. Well, now the world will know that that was my nickname." But he said, I'm really proud of you. Because when I went to undergrad, we were staying in the same city. So he would come over when we were able to connect. We would come over, I would cook dinner, we would chop it up, and then I probably wouldn't hear from him for maybe a couple months, and then we reconnect. This conversation before I left was a little different. I almost said, "What are you preparing me for?" He said, "What are you preparing me for?" He said, "I'm prepared for our lives to go in two totally different directions." And I thought, like, what you mean? Because I, I said, "Are you trying to break up with me?" He said, "No, we're going in two different directions." He said, "You're moving to," I said, "I'm physically moving. My family is still here. I'll be back in Ben Harbor to visit. I mean, this is how we do. You disappear, I disappear for a month or two or several months, and then we reconnect like nothing ever happened." And he said, "I just want you to make us all proud." He said, "You've never done anything to bring shame to your family." I said, "Well, you ain't been around long enough. Like, I done a number of things." He said, "No, you've always," he said, you've known how to get back on the straight and narrow. You have." He said, "I've just made mistake after mistake after mistake. And I can see it now, us splitting." He gave me a hug. He got out of the car. And I thought, this time feels different from all the other times that we like, "Okay, I'll just talk to you later. I'll talk to you soon." This feels different. I received a letter when I moved to North Carolina. It was maybe 5 years later. Five? No. Yeah, like around the time that my father died. I get this letter, and it was from Brian. I don't know how he found me. I don't know how he found me, or maybe got the address. His mom got it from my mom. I'm not sure, but I got a letter from him, and he said, "I knew you would always do the things that you said you were gonna do." I was about 6 months away from graduating from graduate school the first time. And I told him, because I ended up writing him back, and I said, "I reflect on the stories of being in the first grade, my granny being sick, my dad worked first shift, my mother was, I mean, it was retail, so I don't even know what shift that was sometimes. My siblings are older, so they were either in extracurricular activities or one was in college. And I freaked out because I couldn't get in the front door because there was a spider dangling from the doorknob, and his grandmother, Brian's grandmother, yelling from across the street for me to calm down and to untangle my keys. And I was telling her about the spider, but I think I've told that story before about yeah, with the spider and me not being able to be a latch kid after that day. It only lasted for maybe a week, I think. then someone else had to keep me. So that was, a little trial run, but that the upbringing, the families, the conversations, the experiences, the deer hanging from the tree in their backyard after they went hunting, from me not being able to go with Brian when his grandparents would take him on fishing trips because my parents were like, "You don't know how to swim. Why are you getting in?" No, we're not letting you go. Get on the boat. And then having seen them come back that the truck and the boat back into their yard. It's all these great memories. And how the village, and I talk about all the time how the village just, those stories continue to encourage me. They stories that I'm even a part of. Brian's story, friendship, like that was my first experience with neighborhood friends. And how I was ready to jump on somebody for him, he would always be ready to jump on somebody for me. And the older we got, we would, him and his cigarettes, which he knew I hated, hated him smoking cigarettes. He'd be smoking cigarettes. And I would be rotating my mixed CDs in, because, in that time you could have like multiple CDs in the player. And then, just when that one done, just go on to the next one. So that's what we were doing, especially when he was in town. And gosh, just the real R&B. That was another way of me falling in love with music, because that's something Brian and I did all the time. But Brian taught me so many valuable lessons, and from not knowing it or being in denial as a young person to adulthood, with truly treating people the way that they want to be treated, the way that you want to be treated. I can say so much more about Brian and his family, but because I know that this is definitely Happy Pride Month for so many people in that community, and from myself being a person that's clearly been an ally for a very long time. An ally when I didn't think I was an ally. An ally when I thought it was just, I'm just supporting my friend. So my takeaway for this story time for a lot of you is, you may have somebody in your life that you're not exactly happy, or you're a little displeased with their lifestyle. I encourage you to ask more about their story, because the more I wanted to know about Brian and his story, the more it made crystal clear that we had so many things in common versus differences. So just take that time to ask someone about their story today. So, and that brings us to the end of another episode of Please Do Tell. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the power of storytelling. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. I love when you all interact in the comments section, especially on YouTube, but we also appreciate it when you leave a review on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us. Your feedback means the world to me, and it helps others discover the magic of Please Do Tell. And remember, if you have a story you'd like to share or any thoughts you'd like to express, I'm all ears, okay? So you can find me on social media. I'm Ronnika.Williams, and the Please Do Tell podcast is actually on IG and Facebook under the same name. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and keep sharing your stories with the world. I'm your homegirl, Ronnika, and this is Please Do Tell. We'll see you next time.